Super Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a smackdown between two high-end phones on Sprint. We've got the Samsung Galaxy Nexus here and the HTC EVO 4G LTE here. Both LTE Android smartphones running ice cream sandwich, both the same price, $199 with contract, so which one do you pick? We're going to find out. So here we have two high-end Android smartphones on Sprint, both $199 with contract, both, as you can see, just about the same size, both running Android OS 4.0 ice cream sandwich, and they both have 720p displays. Gee, how do you decide? Well, honestly, it's kind of a two-way slaughter. The HTC EVO 4G LTE, in terms of hardware, really slaughters the Galaxy Nexus. But when it comes to software purity, which is the Galaxy Nexus's selling point, well, it slaughters the HTC because this is a Google Experience phone. That means pure Google OS 4.0 ice cream sandwich, no customizations, no software overlays. In fact, there's not even a whole lot of carrier software in here, like Sprint's usual value-added apps like Sprint TV and NASCAR and all that stuff. Nope, not going to find it here. So there you have it. That's the big difference right there. In terms of hardware, they do both have 720p displays. That means 1280 by 720 pixels. 4.65 inches for the Galaxy Nexus versus 4.7 inches for the HTC. Okay, we'll call that really pretty much the same thing. And as you can see, only one of them has capacitive buttons here. HTC is sticking with that older way of doing things, but I think a lot of people actually like having the always easy to find capacitive buttons at the bottom. Since this is a pure Android reference device and Google designed ice cream sandwich in mind without having those buttons anymore, your buttons have become software buttons at the bottom of the screen. Instead, they do the same things, back, home, and your multitasking button, just different ways of doing the same thing. While we're talking about displays, they may have the same resolution, but they use two different display technologies. HTC uses a Super LCD, and that's your standard RGB arrangement, and this has a Super AMOLED HD display. You know Samsung's Super AMOLED displays. Very high contrast, great deep blacks, better than life colors, but it has that pentile matrix arrangement that I know lately has fallen out of popularity with a lot of folks. Why is that? Because the pixel arrangement is such that if you have really, really good eyes, you could potentially see the pixels when you're looking really closely at the phone. Now me, I don't have such good eyes. I have a hard time seeing those pixels. But I would probably give HTC the edge in this case because these days people are preferring that Super LCD. That said, if you showed both of these phones to your average newbie in a cell phone store and they didn't know anything about pentile matrix, RGB, sub-layouts, anything like that, and you told them to look at both screens, I bet you would probably have a 50-50 fall off there, because some people would say, ooh, I like the really high contrast and the bright colors here, and others would say, I really like the sharpness of the HTC and the balanced warm and natural colors. So as we move on to another obvious differentiator, there is the, well, kind of infamous Samsung plasticky build. Not that it's not a sturdy phone, not that it doesn't feel kind of weighty in the hand, because yes, it is sturdy, it does feel weighty, but we're talking about 100% pure plastic here. Plastic on the sides, and this kind of matte plastic with a checked finish on the back, a thin battery door that pulls off. So you don't look at it and say, wow, that there is one expensive phone exactly. In contrast, HTC has really been upping the game in terms of build quality, because they know that's important to a lot of folks. You carry this around, this is an extension of yourself. You don't want to whip out a cheesy phone, maybe, that kind of thing. So we've got metal here. Nice brushed metal surface. Metal all along on the edges here. Sort of like a unibody design, but not quite like the HTC One series, because we have panels affixed over here. This is also metal. This has a metal kickstand as well, in contrasting red. Looks like a more expensive phone. And we do have one piece of shiny plastic here. I think it makes it kind of look interesting. But I also realize that this one is a real divider. Some people like the way this looks a lot, some people don't. But one thing this does do is, this is removable, and this allows you to get to the micro SD card slot. You can expand your expansion with this phone. That's a strong plus. With the Galaxy Nexus, one good thing about the fully removable back is, look, there's the battery. Awesome, you can swap the battery out. 1850 milliamps versus 2000 milliamps in the HTC. So you get more battery in the HTC, but it's sealed inside, so you're going to have to rely on external chargers and battery packs if you want to get more juice in it. This guy, you can always buy a spare battery. But there is no micro SD card slot here. You have 32 gigs of storage with about 27, 28 available to you, and that's all there is. You can't add any more. The HTC has 16 gigs of storage, and you can expand that with micro SD cards. In terms of wireless, both of these phones have 3G, EVDO, Rev-A, and they have LTE. Sprint does not yet have an actual LTE network, but they're going to start building that out, or opening it up for use on around the middle of 2012 with 6 cities, and then they'll expand from there. Both have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS, and those work just fine on both phones. Slightly better wireless reception, both for 3G, EVDO, and for Wi-Fi on the HTC EVO 4G LTE. Also, better voice quality. Samsung's not bad. It's pretty reasonably clear. We're not talking either of these phones being bad by any means, but the HTC has that HD voice option, and Sprint's going to turn that on their network, and that'll work if you're using 2 HD voice capable phones. But even just using the regular network, really nice clarity on the HTC. In terms of speakerphone volume, neither of them is wildly impressive. It's passable, it's okay, it's not like, wow, I'm really going to want to watch a whole movie listening to that speaker. When it comes to performance, well, yeah, this is where HTC really slaughters the Nexus. It has the Qualcomm S4 Snapdragon, that's a 4th generation Crate CPU, 1.5 gigahertz dual core, and that was really designed to compete with the Tegra 3 quad core, so it gives you an idea, that's really top of the line performance. This has a 1.2 gigahertz dual core TIO mapped, been around for a while, not super duper fast. In fact, we're talking about a quadrant square of 2,000 for the Nexus versus just about 5,000 for the EVO 4G LTE. So that's a big difference. And if you're looking at the Antutu benchmark figures, then there's about a 2,000 point spread between them. We've got about 5,000 on the Nexus, 7,000 on the HTC EVO 4G LTE. For GL benchmark 2.1 testing, we got 63 FIPS on the HTC versus 28 on the Nexus. Now, honestly, these days phones have more processing power than you need, so we're not saying that the Nexus feels like a slug. In fact, it feels quite fast, especially because it's running just pure vanilla Android with no software layer on top, no UI customization, nothing like that. And really, there are very, very, very few, if any, applications are actually making use of all the processing power in phones. So if you're looking at using this phone today, either of these phones, they're both more than fast enough for what you want to do. But for those of you who keep your phone for the duration of your 2-year contract, well, a year from now when a new OS comes out or developers actually find some use for the amazing CPU and GPU speed in these phones, that's when the HTC will probably age better because it is so much quicker. In terms of the rear main cameras, well, again, HTC just kind of wins the race by a wide margin here. They have an 8 megapixel camera with an LED flash, backside illuminated sensor, very fast lens. Nexus has a 5 megapixel with an LED flash, and you know, Google made a big deal about the Nexus and about its camera when they first announced this phone, and that's in part because Ice Cream Sandwich really sped up the camera UI a lot, and you could do things like panoramas really nicely and shoot pictures quite quickly. But now that that operating system has come to other phones like the HTC, well, they're all taking their bit of benefit from that. And as folks discovered, once they actually got their Nexuses in hand, the camera is okay. It's not great. It's 5 megapixels. You can only do so much with a 5 megapixel camera phone. It takes okay pictures. It does not take phenomenal pictures. The HTC, on the other hand, also has a dedicated image chip. It's an image processing chip, just like you'd find in a dedicated camera. That means very fast shots, 60 FIPS, 1080p video recording. You can shoot photos while recording video at the same time. Just much better pictures overall. Very fast camera, great 1080p quality. They really win there. Alright, so the poor Galaxy Nexus is getting slaughtered here mostly, isn't it? Here's where it gets to fight back, though, and this is where we talk about the software on here. You can see the difference in the user interface right here. Right, we've got HTC Sense 4 running here, which is a very nice overlay, and I would recommend it for a lot of people, especially newbies. It makes some things more friendly, more intuitive. Or if you've been using HTC phones for a while, you enjoy that interface, you know how it works, that kind of thing. It's pretty good stuff. But there are purists out there, those of you who just want the fastest phone that you can get, and you want the ability to load custom ROMs on, you don't have to worry about locked bootloaders, all that kind of thing. You know who you are if you know what I'm talking about, these more geeky things here. You want to root your phone, customize it to all heck, and you want to know, hopefully, that you're going to get software updates really fast and before anybody else, which has typically been the case with the Nexus phones because they're direct from Google phones. Now, as we've learned from the Verizon version of the Galaxy Nexus, sometimes once the carrier gets involved in the approval process, things can slow down. We hope that things will be quick with Sprint when it comes to software updates and all that kind of thing, but we don't know yet how that's going to roll. But still, in general, we would hope that the Nexus gets software updates pretty quickly relative to other phones. As you look at the UI here, other than the difference in the wallpapers, you can see we've got, again, that all your buttons are handled by software over here. On the HTC, if you want to get to settings, You swipe down, you can tap on the button labeled Settings. Very intuitive again for newbies. On the Nexus, the way pure Android works is you swipe down right here, and there's your little setting symbol. Now you'll recognize that setting symbol if you use an Android tablet. If you're a newbie, you'd probably say, well, I have no idea what that thing means over there. It's decoration, maybe I don't know. But difference just in the way you do simple things like that. If you look at the application drawer, both of these, you're going to tap on a software button to do that. Then you're looking at what seems to be similar stuff at first, but HTC customizes theirs, and you can see you have drawers for all your most used applications and those things you've downloaded. This is just your straight, all your applications are here. Swipe side to side, you get a little visual effect. And if you want to look at widgets, you just tap over to your widgets tab over here, and you can look at all the widgets that are available. With the HTC, you're going to use the personalize function or press and hold on the home screen, just as like you did with older versions of Android, to add your widgets up there. If we look at something like settings, which is pretty much a core function, obviously, you can see how HTC has customized the looks. They've given it more colorful icons, a little bit more of the visual effect, and a lot more straightforward here. Now the good thing about straightforward is this doesn't weigh down on your processor, and it's just going to run and fly as quick as it possibly can because there's no eye candy being added on. Not that we would call the HTC slow, it's certainly not, but there's that difference. So in the end, they're both certainly very nice phones. But I have to say, from the hardware standpoint, from the materials that are used and the features and all that kind of thing, the EVO 4G LTE really wins. It's much more for your high-end mainstream buyer who maybe wants some software customization. They're familiar with HTC Sense. They like a couple of little hints, like, again, settings that have a little gear and say settings underneath to give them a clue about what they're doing and where they're doing it. And the next Galaxy Nexus is for you power users who really want to customize your phone and want pure Android experience and quick updates. So this is for the more technically oriented enthusiast, the Galaxy Nexus, versus the EVO 4G being more of your mainstream phone. Now be sure to watch our video reviews of both of these phones, and you can read our written reviews of the Galaxy Nexus on our website and the EVO 4G LTE as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.